Welcome back to Programming from Scratch. In the last video, I kind of stopped it without having a passing test. That's really bad of me, so we're going to fix that right now. This is exactly the state it was when the last video ended, and all I should have to do is refresh. What? Cancel. Refresh. There we go. Okay, so now the controller exists. We can see that. And one thing I want to do at the end of every video is up the semantic version by just a little bit. And that's interesting. Oh, there we go. Up the semantic version by just a little bit, and we should see that the test fails now because our app is not at the correct version. Change that. And now the app is at the correct version. All right, and just like last time, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping before we get rolling. Cut this out, and I'm going to save it, and then make a new file. Set the language to JavaScript. Okay, paste in our code. Set the globals just like we did for everything else. Global and Angular is the only global here. Save it. And because it is pertaining to the backlogs, we want to save it in the backlogs feature. Go in there, and this will be the backlogs. I'm going to spell it out for the JavaScript files. Controller right there. We need to make sure that we add any new files to the runner, or else they won't run. So we'll have a backlogs spec, and we have app slash backlogs slash backlogs controller, just like that. Save everything, make a new file, language.js. All right, and then we go to our app spec, and we can pull these out because they are part of the backlog, not part of the app per se. Paste them in, except they need to be surrounded with the correct stuff. Global, describe it, inject, expect. And you notice these are in a different order, and that's because the order doesn't necessarily matter. What matters is that they're up there. As usual, keep everything strict. Paste everything back in. We have these bits that are out of alignment. Put them back in alignment. Save. Well, yep. So this is going to be backlogs spec. All right, and we refresh. We should see. So you can see it only found the one spec. So we need to make sure that we have in the spec runner. See, we didn't put it in the right spot. So backlogs, backlog spec. There, now we have some stuff. All right, argument backlogs control is not a function, got undefined. Okay, so let's go to the oops. All right, backlogs control is there. Backlogs controller. Let me make sure that we got all our files. Refresh. Looks like everything came across just fine. Backlogs spec. And I'm guessing the error is coming from here. If I X that, and then refresh. Okay, so we know that this is in fact included. Yes, so if you move your files around like this, what needs to happen is it can't find backlogs control because it doesn't know what app to look in. So we have to tell it what app to look in. So we just say module, and this is the Kanban app. And like I said earlier, before each will run before each test, we should be able to save, run it, and now everything's back to the way it should be. And we can move forward. So as per our specs that we had defined, a backlog has a collection of tasks. So we expect that ctrl dot tasks will be defined. So expect that to be defined, and clearly it's not. Backlog does not have CTRL is undefined. So we can fix that a couple ways. The way that I'm going to fix it is by creating another before each section. We're going to put that inject just like we did for everything else. And we're going to move our controller logic that we have in the test below to up here. Like so. Get rid of that, and we will define our controller up above. So if I refresh, now we have expected undefined to be defined, and that's because tasks is undefined. So on our controller, we need to define tasks. We should be able to come in here and just simply say this dot tasks equals anything really. So we'll say null and then refresh, and you can see it passes. Now this is one way to do this, but this is not the correct way to do this. The idiomatic way in Angular is to put everything on scope. So let's go refactor our tests, and we'll say that we expect scope.tasks to be defined. And we should see that scope is not defined, which it isn't. But if we come up here, we can say var scope, right? Scope is still not the scope is defined, but tasks of undefined or null reference, because scope says it's undefined, but it is sort of defined. Crazy JavaScript stuff. But we can come over to here, and if our controller expects scope, and this is a funky Angular scope with the $sign. It's a special thing that you can inject. And then we'll just say that our scope equals scope. Or actually, we'll say scope equals our scope. Like that. And we still get the same thing, but if we come over here and we say scope, and we have to inject it just like we did before, then we should get a different result. Unknown provider, scope provider. Which is not exactly the error that I was expecting. And I think we do actually need to flip these around. It's easy enough. Scope equals scope. See if that has any effect. No. Okay. It's a tad annoying. Let's get this in here like this. This is a different syntax for Angular that when we minimize our JavaScript, what would happen to this variable over here, this scope, is that it would get shrunk down to something like A or B, and then we wouldn't be able to correctly reference it anymore. But if we put it in a string, then it will not get minimized in the string, and then Angular can still know what to do with it. is unexpected. Ah, I know why. We have to inject it here also. And then we don't have to inject it there. That's the story. No. Okay, well, oftentimes when there's an issue like this, what's happening is that we are trying to reference something that would normally be in a library. No. Oh, it's on the desktop. This would normally be in a library in Angular that we don't have included in the tests. So we have Angular. Is there anything? No. Okay, well, let's work through this. If we ignore this part, right? So we can ignore this, just like that, and we can ignore that, just like that, and we can ignore this, okay? Then we refresh, and this happens. So, what if we do this, but we just forget the scope part, right? Just drop that out altogether. And we refresh, then boom. Quickly running out of time. So we come here and we say that we are going to inject. It might be that I am not injecting the right scope. So we come here and we say scope equals root scope dot $new. Save that, and inside here we just say scope $scope equals scope. What's that say? Okay, no blowups yet. Is this supposed to be like that? I think maybe it is. No, that's all kinds of mad at me, isn't it? Oh. So that, so no anger yet. Do that. Do that. Save. Refresh. It's not mad at me yet. Tasks equals null. Still not mad at me. All right. And if we do that, then it passes. Okay. So now we switch back and nope, not quite that far. Cut that out. We don't want that. We don't care about that. Come back to the backlogs controller, and we don't want that. Replace that. We do that. We refresh. Everybody's happy. Okay. So it looks like, and I'll test this, I think the problem was simply that I was injecting the wrong thing here, and that this was a function. So I'm going to test the function part first. I think it has more to do with that than it does the other stuff. Refresh, boom. So I was, well, we'd have to do this, wouldn't we, to fully test it. Test it here. Yes. So I was simply using a function when I shouldn't have been. But now I've made the mistake, so you don't have to. All right, now that's passing. All right, so now we have tasks that is defined, except for it's a collection of tasks, right? So it can't just be that it's defined. It needs to not be null, except for it is null. Let's come back to the controller, and there, it's not null. So now that passes. Again, though, it's a collection, right? So to be array, and let's do type of, and say it says number to be array. So we go to the controller, change it to an array, refresh, and object to be array. So I want to actually assert that it's an array. So for right now, we'll say that we expect it to actually be an array. And there we can see expected that to be that. And that is odd. So this is a reference comparison. And we want it to be a value comparison. Right? So now that's passing. So we've asserted that not only does a controller exist, but that it has a collection of tasks that starts off empty at least. And we'll cover the rest later, but let's see. We have all our passing tests, and we've made updates, so we expect it to be 0.0.0 or 0.0.3. And it's not. It is now 0.0.3. And we'll continue. We'll do the next part next time. Thanks for watching.